Hello, my name is Marc Mosko and I'm going to show you how I sharpen grafting knives. I'm going to begin talking about some of the equipment that I have. Then I'll talk about what makes a grafting knife, and I'll show you two different styles. And then we'll get into how to sharpen them on these blocks. So the first thing is the sharpening stones. I use diamond stones that use water to keep the metal filings out of the block. And these have a diamond sharpener. This is another type of diamond block, and this one is extremely flat. I use this really for chisels that need to be, really right on. And but for a regular grafting knife, these sorts of diamond blocks are just fine. I like this size because a grafting knife fits, so I don't have to, shift it around. So this is a good width for the block. These blocks are extra coarse, coarse, fine, and extra fine. If you don't want to spend all that money, you can get one that's just coarse and fine as the two sides. So you lose the extra fine and the extra coarse, but that works just as well in some cases. This has its own block, and this has rubber feet so it won't slide around. Okay, and then this is another sharpener that's meant for pocket knives, but what I wanted to show about this is it has this 20-degree bevel on it. So if you're learning how to keep a knife angled, getting something that has a 20-degree guide, or just making a wood block in your shop on a table saw, can be a good aid for you. All right. Grafting knives are single bevel, so that means you have a flat side that doesn't have a bevel on it, and then you have the cutting side that has the bevel on it. And this means when you're cutting through wood, it will always tend to go one direction, and it will help give you a straight cut, just like a chisel does through wood. Some grafting knives are straight, some have a curve. I'll show the difference of sharpening these two styles. A third style has this sort of piece on it, which are used for certain types of grafts, and I'm not going to talk about dealing with something like that. This is just a slightly curved blade, so you would sharpen this similarly to how you would sharpen a very curved blade like this. So now I'm going to give you the 30-second summary of what the process is. When you have a new knife or a damaged knife, you want to flatten it. So you're going to sharpen the flat side, and this will wear it down, and you'll see that you have an even wear on it. Once the flat side is flat, you'll then sharpen the bevel, and this will raise a burr on the flat side, and you'll be able to feel it with your finger. And you want that burr to go all the way along the edge. And once you have that, you've sharpened it on that grit. And you can then go to the next grit, remove that burr, and then sharpen the bevel side until you get a burr again. You're just going to repeat that through all of your grits. And once you finish that, it's sharp. So I'm going to begin sharpening. I'm starting on black, and these have a color coding black, blue, red, green for extra coarse through extra fine. So I'm starting on the extra coarse, and this knife is new, so this is all very shiny on the back. What I'm going to do is a trick that's very useful when you're learning to sharpen, is to put a marker pen on the edge. So I'm going to take a Sharpie and color the back and then grind it, and you'll see more clearly how it's wearing down the back side. Then I'm going to flip and I'm going to mark the blade, when I sharpen the blade, and you'll be able to see very clearly where I'm taking material off. Okay, here we go. Normally you don't need to do this on the back side. It just shows up a lot better on the camera. And Sharpie will come off of metal with rubbing alcohol. Comes off very easily. It won't be permanent. So we will give this bloody knife a moment to dry. And while we're doing that, I'm going to put some tap water on the block to wet that down. I didn't mention why I use water blocks instead of oil blocks. Oil blocks are a lot more messy in my opinion, and if you use oil on a grafting knife, you need to be sure to get all the oil off before you graft. So I find the water blocks a lot easier. You can use water with some stone blocks as long as they've never been oiled before. So if you want to use a natural stone, artificial stone, or the diamond blocks, that's up to you. But I find these, for what I do, very convenient. Okay, this has mostly dried, so I'm going to give this a few grinds to start flattening the back side. So I lay it down flat, I apply some even pressure with my other hand, and it's not that essential to just go one way when you're grinding it flat, so I just go back and forth. And we'll take a look at this. So you can see it's removing material kind of through here and along the back, but not really at the tip or the top. So we just need to keep going. You know, when you see this in person, you'll see that where it's removing material, it's dull. And where the material hasn't been removed, it's shiny. And that's just, you know, new blade versus scuffed up blade. So we'll keep going with this. So I can see the dull part is making good progress through here, but at the tip and at the very inside, it's still not getting any material. So we just need to keep going with it. So this is actually joined front to back through the middle, but it's still not getting much material off the tip, so we'll keep going. So sometimes I change the angle that I'm going at just to mix things up a little. The wearing has started, it's almost to the inner notch, and it's down to about this level here, but the very tip still isn't flattening out yet. Okay, so that has gotten wear all the way along the cutting edge. So I'm going to say that's good enough for what we're going to do, and then I'm going to start sharpening it. Before I sharpen this one, I'm going to do the same thing to this beat up knife. And so this is an older knife. It still has a lot of sap and other things on it in some spots. So I'm going to flatten this one out the same way, and then we'll get to sharpening them. Okay, that's good enough for me. I see abrasion all along the cutting edge. So now we'll get to sharpening. When you're sharpening, you can have the blade at too high of an angle or at too low of an angle. And if it's too high of an angle, you're just going to sharpen the very, very edge of the blade. And if it's at too low of an angle, you'll be sharpening the ridge and not the edge. So you want to get it to be, you know, very close to 20 degrees if you can. The most important thing is that you're consistent with the angle. So if it's not exactly 20 degrees, that's fine, but as long as you keep the angle consistent through all of the grates, you'll sharpen the blade to your, say, natural angle that you hold it at. The technique that I use for holding the blade is I get it kind of locked into my body and I use my other hand to push, and this lets me keep a constant angle with my right hand and then use my left hand to keep even pressure along the blade. And I do this by just shifting my body across rather than trying to do it with my arms and wrists. All right, so I'm going to mark the bevel so we can see how well I am getting the right angle to sharpen this. And you just need the ink along the bevel. It doesn't need to be like all over the blade. And it needs a moment to dry. Otherwise the water will just take it off. For an example, I'm going to do this at too low of an angle a couple times so you'll see what it's like, and then I'll do it at my normal angle. So what you'll see is the wear is at the top and not so much on the bevel or the edge itself. And you would see scrape marks along the flat side. So those are all indications that you're at too low of an angle and need to increase it some. So as I do this, you'll see a wave of water being pushed by the edge, and that wave of water should be relatively constant along the edge. That's another good indication that you're at least applying equal force. And let's see how we're doing here. So here we see the wear is along the edge of the cutting edge of the blade and not so much at the top of the bevel. So that's a reasonable angle to be working at. So I'm testing for the burr with my fingertip, and I can feel it everywhere except the very tip. Another test is to use a fingernail, and it will catch. So if you don't have a lot of sensitivity in your fingers, you can just use a fingernail and it will literally catch there on the edge, and it doesn't catch here at the tip. So I'll keep doing this a little bit more. Okay, so I have the burr at the tip. I'm going to switch to showing you the curved knife first, and then we'll move to the next grit. So the curved knife means that I'm going to have to freestyle it a little as we're going to be able to get the rounded part. So for a curved, I do the majority of it just like the other knife, trying to get the edge kind of perpendicular to the block and pushing along the top here. Often curved knives get sharp up here, so you might not want to push at the tip. It'll depend knife to knife. So there's burr, not so much here in the middle, and then there's burr again out towards the end. So this middle section needs more. Okay, so I feel that all the way out to the curved part. Now for the curved part, I don't know a really good way of getting the right angle, so I just kind of improvise as I go over the curve, and I generally move the blade in an arc fashion. So I'm starting at the beginning of the bend and then ending up at the tip. So I now have a burr along the whole distance. So we're going to go to the next grit. So I'm going to wipe this clean, flip this, put some water down, and I'm going to go back to sharpening the straight one again. So the first thing is to remove the burr. So we're going to put the flat side down. Now this time it's important to only go in the direction of the blade. You know, I was going all over when I was grinding it down, but to remove the burr, I go just in the direction of the blade. And this will just take maybe like 3 or 4 passes to get that off. I still feel that. Okay, that feels smooth the whole length. So now it really is just repeating what I did before. You know, I'm going to sharpen the bevel side until I get a burr the whole length. As you go up in grits, you'll need to probably do more strokes, and the burr will be less and less noticeable each time. It'll be a smaller and smaller burr as you go up in grits. And I'm going to put some alcohol on there to remove the ink. And that should be a very nice, even blade. This is sharp. Thank you very much.